Okay, my friends, hold on to your terrestrial hats. We are going to visit Venus, we're going to visit Mars, we're going to visit Jupiter, and we are going to see the similarities, because I claim there is nothing that exists that did not originate from life. These are the only pictures ever taken at Venus. We're going to look at this panel down here. We'll start with that. Let's get started. You see that, my friends? I've been doing a lot of research on Venus. This is the only images we have of the surface of Venus. What I want you to look at is these little tiny balls. You see those little round balls? You see them everywhere? Everywhere, 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 everywhere. Now, what are those little tiny balls? Do we have any clue what they might be? Well, yes, we do. Let's take a look. Okay, this is another shot from the same area. See all the little balls? You see these little flat plates under here? That's the basement layer. Okay, my friends, not only will this be a shocker du jour, this will be a epiphany. Well, what is an epiphany? Well, it's a realization of reality, basically. And sometimes it's considered in the religious realm. It does not have to be. It's just an awakening, a realization of everything that you really missed. It's just like a shock to the system. All right, let's just start off on the same page. My feeling is that there's virtually nothing that I can point to that it did not start with biology. And I'm going to explain every one of these pictures and the biology that is represented by them. Just not rocks, just not planets, just not moons, just not meteorites and asteroids. They all come from biology. Let's just get started with the start. All right, let's just take this panel down here. This was a picture I showed you, or you're seeing it now, is from the only picture from the Mars surface was from this one lander that the Russians put up many, many years ago. These balls, see these little round balls? That's just not a natural formation of round balls. Then we're going to see these plates. Where this thing landed, I imagine it sort of shot out stuff like that and left the heavier little balls and all the dust took off. But I don't know that for a fact. It just appears that would probably be the case. Now, you see these plates under here? Like just flat plates, and then all these round balls in there. Try to understand what would cause that situation. These flat plates, just flat surface, and then above those plates are these little blueberries, these little balls. Well, guess what? We have them here on Earth, and they have them on Mars as well, because everything is biology. And these, my friends, were in skin. And you say, oh, come on, Roger. Well, let's see. Let us just check this out. I say this is skin that has eroded and left the balls laying on top of the basement, just as you see here on Mars, which are the Mars blueberries, taken from the Curiosity rover, right up there, close and personal. This is the basement layer of skin. Above that was skin with all these balls in it. It eroded away, dusted away, basically, on Mars, and there's no water to speak of. Well, there's none really on the surface that I know of. And it left the blueberries. Now, what are these? Can we see these on Earth? Yeah, absolutely. And where are they? Well, here they are right here. These are what they call the Moqui Marbles. The same as the Mars blueberries, and the same as the Venus blueberries. And these are the Earth blueberries. These are the American blueberries. This is out in Nevada, all out in the West out there. It covers virtually forever. This is in the United Kingdom. I'm telling you right now, my statement is zero exists that was not biology. Now, the sun and the moon, the moon is biology, but the sun, that's hard to explain completely. However, there are gases and molecules coming off the sun that are biological. Now, primarily, it gives off radiation in the form of the tiniest little particles, the dipole electrons, which they're not molecules yet. But it does also give off molecules that are in the organic range. Anyway, that's a whole other issue. That's the sun. Every other place I can find that you can actually see the surface and see what it's made of is made of biology. This is the United Kingdom. These balls are the same as these. Now, the reason these are fuzzy and there's moss growing on them, or whatever is growing on them is growing on them, is because it hasn't had enough time to eat them down to what's left inside. It's just a stone. In this case, they're like metal balls. That will eat that away until there's nothing but that little core left. And this is skin. I'm telling you, it's just what it is. This is the biology of flesh. These are the balls that are in this with all these little straps going here and there. So you can pull, you can twist, you can do this, you can do that. They can squinch together, pull apart. That's what's going on here. As it eroded, they lay down here in their own flesh, which is the mud right here. All right, below this, there's going to be a basement layer, just like there's a basement layer here. Now, this is what it looks like biologically. There's the skin, right there. There's the flesh, right there. The balls have just dropped down into the eroded flesh, that's all. And this is inside of a human creature. These are these tiny little balls, they're just everywhere. And you see this? This is the same picture as this, only this is a little bit bigger. You see this here? This is the layers of tissue that are in your body you just can't even imagine. I'm going to show you here on Earth something that was taken by a guy, desert drifter. Poor guy was killed in a car accident. And he did some fabulous work. But I'm going to show you a shot that he took. Nobody can explain, but I can explain it, and I'll show you exactly what it is. Okay, so this is some of the work Desert Drifter did, fabulous work he did, and he was questioning what these things are. And you see these layers, it's just a zillion layers here, and you see that little wide open crack there, which something like there must have been fluid in here that flowed out, and then you see these things sitting on top. What in the world could have caused that? And there is no geologist on the face of the planet can give an explanation for that, but I can. And I'll show you exactly what it is right now. As a matter of fact, let me turn the camera over here. There is what you're looking at right there. All right, this is in the guts, basically. And I'm not exactly sure where in the gut it is. However, these are those things sticking up. These layers are in here. Doctors don't even know how many layers of tissue there is. They don't even know about the complexity of the human body because they can't see it the way we can once we understand mud fossils. This right here is not just a erosion, and then they have no explanation for this whatsoever, none, zero. I do. This is what's called the interstitium. It's a fluid-filled highway that separates this, which would have been inside the gut of some gigantic creature. It's just what we got. And that was like, I'm not sure what it is, which part of the digestive system, but it's like villi sticking up like this. And all the goop comes down through there and it absorbs it, and then there's membranes in here that take it in through this fluid-filled highway, which is now evacuated. And that did not even exist in medical knowledge until 2018. Meet your interstitium, a newfound organ. You see that fluid-filled highway? That's what I was just showing you in the Desert Drifter picture. And the fluid runs out of it because that runs through your whole body and protects this that's down here, which was all those layers. You can't see them. They're just impossible to see. There's so many of them. But you can see this is the skin. And there's the fluid-filled highway. This is highly, highly, highly magnetic. Obviously, your skin is not that thick. Well, some of us have a thicker hide than others. Anyway, this is the fluid-filled highway. And then you get down into where all you got your own little balls, and then you get down to your flesh. And you don't want to get invaded past here. That's a whole medical issue. However, I do understand what I saw up there. This is the skin out here. What we were seeing there was those little bumps where villi and food would pass through there and get sucked up and absorbed. All right, so you're going to say, Roger, that's got to be more than 6 feet thick, and it is. I believe they had people actually living in these crevices, and I say that it's basically a membrane. You can say, oh, how could a membrane be 6 feet thick? Well, let's take a look. This is from Tyson, a friend of mine out in Oregon. That membrane is 6 feet thick. This is out in the West Coast, and it is the outside layer of flesh from Scorbzilla. I'm not going to get too deep into that now because that's a whole other issue. But these are just giant creatures all over the world. We know about Typhon, we know about Quetzalcoatl, we know about Scorbzilla, and there are many, many others. And this was all written about in history. It's not just me that we're talking about it. I'm talking about history, and I'm showing you the evidence that supports what it said. Now, you see all these little ridges around these little... That's because this is a membrane. This originally had like goop slaughtered all over this whole thing. Nothing could penetrate through these tight junctions. They're called tight junctions. The only thing allowed through was through these, what they call protein channels, which are, they have polarities in them that seek and repel. All right, they have water-loving and water-hating layers in between. You don't have to get into too deep into this. Just remember, this is a layer that cannot be penetrated, as that layer above cannot be penetrated. And in between is there a lot of fluids and so forth that are the fatty fluids. And this can bend into all these kind of things, but it never, ever, 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 ever can anything go through these junctions, or you get sick. You got nasty stuff in you everywhere. The membrane keeps the nasty out and keeps the good stuff in. If you don't have a good membrane, you're in trouble. And there are certain chemistry you need in your body to do this, and it's produced by bacteria and enzymes. All right, you see this? You know about all these tiny little balls. They turn into these Moqui Marbles when everything gets washed away and they're dried out, or dusted away and they're dried out, and you end up with these little hard cores. These still have meat on them. Literally meat is on there. And it's being eaten by whatever that moss is. And this is in salt water, so the moss is brown. Well, guess what? Where it's being brought into the sunlight in Alaska and places in the Arctic now because of the thawing, all of these balls are completely saturated with some form of bacterial moss that was resident in the creature when it died. This stuff was in that creature when it died. This didn't just jump on every single one of these balls. Every single one of these balls has identical chemistry on it, 100% identical. All right, these are things growing. They call them stromatolites. No, the balls are here, deep inside here, and it's just flesh on here. So whatever this moss is, and it's the exact same moss, 100% of them. And guess what? Exactly same thing happens in Alaska. So there's no other possibility other than that this moss was resident inside these flesh layers when this thing was alive. Now, you could easily dig inside here and grab a ball or two out of there and just find out what does it grow? What's growing in here? Because it's already going to be growing in here. It doesn't have to get into the water to start growing. It's already inside and resident inside these balls, and these balls are in the walls. Now let's see Alaska. You got the exact same thing, only they're covered with moss, green moss, because it's fresh water. So you don't forget, the whole landscape covered with them. Well, guess what? Same thing here. This is outside of, it's up in Alaska somewhere, just to put it that way. These are the little balls. 100%, 100% of them, 100%. Did I say 100%? Yeah. Yeah, I think I said 100%. 100% of those balls have the same moss. That's just that you can't evade something like that. I mean, that's like a nuclear explosion of moss. I mean, it just doesn't happen unless it was resident in this gigantic creature's skin, because this is skin, when it died. There's no other explanation. It's zero. And it's been frozen like it's been in a refrigerator, in a freezer for, who knows, at least 3,700 years in my estimation. Now, I would say at least. Now, it's thawing out now. Now, as they actually move in a herd because they're turning into the sunlight. There's no roots on these. They just turn into the sunlight and they eat the ball. And everybody wants a little turn eating, so they all travel in the same direction in a herd. They've been studying them 20 years. They can't figure out because they can't understand. It's all from biology. Okay, my friends, this is out to boulders and beyond. They wanted to go out to Asteroid Bennu and see what these little boulders were all over Asteroid Bennu. So they go out there, they pick up a sample of it, they bring it back to Earth, and they're analyzing. How can we better understand the diversity and characteristics of these boulders on Bennu? Well, they're going to examine them. So they came back with this sample. Let me show you what they found. Okay, here it is. National Science Foundation, Smithsonian spent billions of dollars, or way over $1 billion, to go out and see. A research question is, how can we better understand boulders and beyond, the Bennu mission, and what is this? What is it made of? How did it get there? They have no clue, and so they sent out a lander to pick up a sample. They brought it back. What did they see in this sample? What can they determine from the sample? What was the chemistry? What was the actual look of it? And what was the anatomy? Because I say 100% of everything was biology, and this is very, very simple to see the biology. Okay, so they go up to Bennu, and this is, whoops, what do we got? Okay, so as I said, they go to Bennu, and they grab a chunk of Bennu, which is this right here. They land on there, boom, they go in, they grab a chunk, and they come back. Now this, I think, is about a half a mile wide, something like that. And I don't think it's any more than that. It's not gigantic compared to the things that are in space. But they wanted to see what it was, and they went down inside, and they sunk deep inside. They didn't realize it, and they grabbed a chunk of stuff, and they came back with it. Well, here's what they found when they came back, when they started looking at it. Here it is right here. Now, this was a surprise. You see this white stuff? That is not shown here, but when they put this under a certain light, you can see this. This picture is the same as this picture. See the thing right here, this right here? Now they go down to this size. Now we're looking down here at a very close shot. And then we're looking even closer shot. This little picture is this. Now, so what are we seeing? We're seeing a chunk. This is the biggest, I don't know, maybe the biggest piece, I don't know. What are we seeing over here? This chunk. And when we look at it real close, what do we see? What is this? What are those little bundly looking things here? And these bundly looking things here, what's going on with that? And they're all over here. And they go up in between these layers of phospholipids. Phosphates. They call this the phosphate surprise. No clue it was there. And then this structure is this. In between. They're all over the place in between there. Well, guess why? Let me explain this to you. Okay, so you see the sarcomeres inside the heart muscle. And is it a heart? Well, I say it's a heart. And that right there is a heart valve. And it's coming this direction. If the blood tried to go back, these would clamp right down and pinch that hole closed. This is the opposite. The blood can go that way, but it can't come back this way. This, I believe, is the aorta, the big jobber. And they all break off right about here because of the red and the black blood that's between each other at this point. It makes a separation. And what you end up with is hearts in space like this. This is a different heart. This is another heart in space. It's a different one. This is Psyche, and it's much, much bigger. Now, right at this point right here, you see that? That's this. You see it? And if you took that off, you would end up with this right here underneath. That's where it goes. Boom, 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 boom. Pretty obvious. This breaks off. Why? There's a red and a black layer here, which is iron banding. The hematite and the magnetite, they don't like each other. When they stop flowing, when they're moving, it's okay. But when they stop flowing, they get next to each other, they pop right apart. And that just pops right off. You end up with this. And I've talked to autopsy people. They said they have never understood it. But yes, that's true. That's what happens. The top just basically lifts off because it's not adhered well because they won't push apart. So you end up with being right here, which is here, which is here, which is here. This is a tube. That's a tube going out. That's not a crater going in. That is a tube going out. All these other little spots here, there might be some impact craters, yes. Most of them, I believe, are blowing out because the bud inside here just boiled. And, you know, eventually they just pop out. There's a lot of blood in these spots where they're popping. Anyway, that's what hearts look like when they're in space. And I know it's beyond bizarre, but it's just damn true. And this one here, they always wanted to see why are these boulders all over the place? That's what they were looking for. But they missed the boulders and went down inside and grabbed heart muscle. That's a heart. It's a heart. And they spent all this money. They brought all that stuff back. And these are the heart sarcomeres right here. These are the heart sarcomeres. Here's a muscle from a heart attack victim here on Earth. There's the phosphate layers right there. There's the little pinchy layers that they saw, those sarcomeres. I showed you this stuff. And there's layer after layer after layer. And if you cut them down in this way, you'd be looking at those bundles. Remember, we saw those bundles coming up. Well, let me show you the bundles. Don't forget, this is a side view where we're looking at the side of it, and they have both views. They have this, and then they have the one going this way that they came back from Bennu with. So let's look at that one more time. Here's the sarcomeres. Now, looking into this, the sarcomeres run this way. So these would be this way. They pinch in this. And these are the bundles. Same with these bundles here. Same with these bundles here. This is just one big chunk of heart muscle. And every layer in between every layer is going to be the phosphate. So that's what it slides on, basically. It's a layer on a layer. And they all do this kind of stuff. And in the heart attack victim, there's a cross section of the heart right there. This just shows the devastation of a heart attack. Now on Mars, the same thing. We got the sarcomeres there. This didn't happen millions and millions of years continually, layer, a layer, a layer, a layer. Absolutely not. The red stuff is all of the fleshy stuff that runs out from between the sarcomeres. Normally they pull in using that red muscly stuff. And these are just connective tissues. Very, very tough. That's why they're on the road. This is Mars, no question whatsoever, because there is not a drop of moisture has fallen here. Zero, none, nothing. There's no erosion, and this is dust. Mars is red and dead. And the big reason is it got hit by Venus, wiped the atmosphere completely off, and was absorbed. The magnetic field, which is its power, Mars's power, was stolen by Venus. And when I say stolen, they sucked all of the energy, all of the magnetic fields away. And Venus owns those magnetic fields today. And Mars is gone. No magnetic field, no atmosphere, no life, no growth, no nothing. Venus stole all that. And how did it steal it? Well, here's how it stole it right here. It impacted Mars. This is Mars. This is wider than the United States. It's the Mars Marianas Trench, and it is just absolutely stunningly large. Well, what happened here? How did that happen? Venus hit this, and this was recorded in the not too distant past. When I say that, I'm talking thousands of years ago, but it's still within a recent history of mankind in the memory recorded. All right, so we just saw that. Who absorbed that? All of this. You see this? If you're a welder or you know anybody's a welder, they'll know. Actually, there's no question this is welding arc. And this is a ground, basically, which wants energy. Grounds, just like our ground, our Earth wants energy. It wants energy. It wants to absorb energy. However, it's absorbed too much, and it's too hot now, and it's going to be, well, it already is a problem. I don't know if it's irreversible by any stretch of the imagination. But this is the same thing. It wants electricity to come down. We have lightning. Zzz, it goes right to ground. You ground electricity. It means it won't go to you. It'll go into the ground, because the ground is the preferential place to go. Because it wants this. This is energy. It could be spirit. I don't know. They talk about the light, and this is nothing but pure, raw, electric light. All right, when you see an arc, that is nothing but the white side of electricity. Dipole electron flood theory shows it very clearly. The white is the part that is this. The black is the part that is mass, and that is what wants the white attracted to it. So in the air, right to Earth. Static, you charge too many electric white particles on you, snap, they go right to somehow to get the ground. Electricity from a wire, because electricity is nothing more than the white part. Has no weight. You charge up something with electricity, you didn't add any weight. You just added energy. There's no weight to the white part. None, zero. You take your car, if it's a car, and it weighs 4,000 pounds, you fill it up with electricity, it weighs 4,000 pounds. You drive it 500 miles, it weighs 4,000 pounds. It does not add energy or lose. It adds energy, but it doesn't add any weight. It loses energy, but it doesn't lose any weight. That's because it's only the white charged particles. Did Venus want that energy? Is this stolen energy? It could be. All right, I'm just going to show you really quick. This is all over. This is up on Mars too. This is the Mars Morse code. This is skin pinched together, stretched apart. These are the Moqui Marbles. You see, they're the stretchy parts erode. The ball stays. That's why we have them on Earth. The same thing. You can see this is just like dusted off, like sandblasted. There's no moisture up on Mars. And these are the Mars Morse code. Same thing, filmed by Curiosity 10 years ago. I showed you the Mars muscle. That's all muscle. Eroded, just dusted off. This is, I showed you the mission stuff and the hearts, sarcomeres, the mission statement, the earth moss berries. I showed you this, which was nothing more than some kind of alveoli that's in the, I'm sure this is in the digestive system. That is membrane from the skin, basically. These are Mars blueberries, and they're the same as the Moqui Marbles here on Earth. Now they found this chunk here, and they have no explanation for this at all. I know exactly what it is. This is the bubbly popcorn rock they found in Jezero crater. They're just freaked out. They have no idea what it is. Well, I know what it is. It's brown fat, brown muscle fat. All right, and let me show you another shot of it. Hold on, where is it? Here it is right here. They look like blueberries with a little ball, a little hole in every one of them. And that little tube. Now, it's a brown muscle, no, it's brown fat. There's fat that's a really gooey, juicy fat, and there's none of this stuff in here. This is all primed, ready to release energy. All right, the other ones don't have all these little blueberries in them. They have a big ball of fat. And this is the brown fat, which is, brown fat, which is nutritious, basically. They say it's a good fat to have because you can get energy out of these things very quickly. Okay, this is the good, the bad, and the fatty. And this is bad fat, basically. This is, I want to say bad fat. It's jellyish fat. It does not convert into energy easily. This is beige fat. This is white fat, beige fat, brown fat. The brown fat is what we saw up on Mars. Brown fat can turn into energy very quickly. Right? It's easily absorbed into energy. And that is exactly what we saw on that anomalous piece of fat laying around up on Mars. Everything they have found on Mars, I can explain. This is exactly what it is. You see the little blood vessel there? You see all these ones with the holes? Exactly what I showed you is brown fat. It's brown fat. I'm just sorry, that's what it is. And it's just laying here, a chunk of fat from the exploded thing. This is basement skin. This is a chunk of brown fat that's just laying there. And they have no explanation for it whatsoever. However, I do. And it is a chunk of brown fat. See, there's the Mars crab. All that is an artery. These are little blood vessels going into the sarcomeres, which I showed you before, which are these. Muscle. It's a muscle. You need a ton of blood to service muscle. Muscle requires gobs of blood. And that's what it does. It's injecting it in here into these sarcomeres, which are the muscles. And it will use it, and it'll go back through the vein. See the vein here? Now, I have a rock here in my shop that was, I believe it was a shoulder. I'm not certain of that. But this round part here, I think was the shoulder. And off of the shoulder, you come down with like a pin here that lets your arm rock around strapped to the shoulder, and you can go this way and that way and up and down. It's a very sophisticated little device. This pin right here runs over to here. All right, this is actually tendon. All right, and this is tendon. This is the abrupt transition where it transitions into actual muscle, and I'll show you that in a second. Up here is where all that red blood would come into this muscle to make the muscle work, and there's a ton of arteries up here. Now, so don't forget, we got a bone. We've got the connection here, which lets it go this way, up to this way, and all kinds of different abilities. And then you got your shoulder. I think this is right here, right there on the shoulder. You can go up, you can go down, you can go around, over, this way, that way. Very sophisticated. And then you need a little bit of tendon to get to your muscle. And that is just a little bit of tendon right there, and then you got your muscle right here. That's what I'm thinking this is. And there's the padding on your shoulder. This is just the padding, the fat that's on your shoulder. It's around here. Now, let's look at it in a colored version here. Now, the bone is not shown here, but it is right there. This is the same one as this. Now, this crack up here was where it was saturated with blood. That's an artery. Artery. That's the blood running down. It died, somewhere up in this area, because the blood runs down straight. So this whole thing would have been this way. Now, that's the tendon I showed you. Remember that little round dot? That's the round dot right there. That's the one right there. That's this. All right, then you go into this piece, which is the tendon, which is here. See the round dot? Now we're in the tendon. That tendon is brown. You see, it's brown. There's no pink in there because it doesn't need blood. It doesn't use blood basically at all. Very, very, very little. This uses a lot. But this is a transition zone between here and the muscle. There's got at least 2 or 3 abrupt transitions. This one is obviously very extremely abrupt. And then you run into a couple here where the heavy duty stuff here, which is a lot of strength to tie into the tendon, starts to dissipate. And then by the time you get out here, you're basically into sarcomeres. But there's a couple, 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 abrupt transitions, hard to tell. But by the time you get out here, you're just basically into those ropes of muscle, which I showed you before. So this is to my feeling, I believe this is a shoulder, but that's just from my guesswork on that. So I think I showed you everything here except for Venus being ejected from the Great Red Spot on Mars. And this is not a storm. This is a mound. It's called the Venus Mons. And it comes through as Mars turns. I'm sorry, as Jupiter turns. This mound, which is like a bump here, has to go through the heavy-duty, dense clouds, because this is 350 times more dense than Earth's atmosphere. It's just, they think it's a gas planet. It's not. It's just that the atmosphere is so dense that it crushes heavy duty. It's like going through soup. So this ball has to come through this soup. It's a mound. That's the birth of Venus, because the ancient texts say Venus was born from the feared god Jupiter. And the mound is still there, and it looks quite active at the moment. Now, as that comes through, it's just going through this band of clouds. It's making them swirl around. It's just very, very simple. I don't see how they could have missed it. They say, is this a storm? No. This has to go through there, and it's a bumped up surface. It's got to go through those clouds, that's all. And they're just spinning around as it goes by. So that is that. And this is not planet porn. If you don't like planet porn, I would suggest you don't watch this. However, this is a planetary vagina. I'm just telling you this. All of the anatomical features are here. I'll name them if you'd like, but I'm not going to. That's an anatomical feature. These are anatomical layers of so forth. This is the hairline layer. This is the vaginal canal. These are the vaginal ripples. This, my friends, is the clincher. That right there. And this strap. Take your time to look at it. That little device right there.
Roger.
All right, that's the clincher right there. That little strap and that little tab is the lock that holds the vagina in place. And I'm going to show you a very graphic picture of a vagina, and we'll be able to see this strap very clearly. But all the rest of the anatomical features are here. There's nothing that isn't here. And it was written in the ancient text that Jupiter gave birth to Venus. And I think I have figured out the reason this all happened. And I have been talking about Gaia and the giants, which were her children, which were killed by the gods. Jupiter was the head god that killed all her children. She produced Typhon in the desert to kill Zeus. Zeus ends up killing Typhon. And then I believe he figured, well, Gaia is an issue to me. I'm going to wipe her off the face of the planet, off the face of the universe. And he produced Venus as a weapon against Earth, and it did hit Earth, and it caused a hell of a problem. And then it wiped Mars completely out, because I think Mars and Earth were teamed up against Zeus, and who was Jupiter. And he decided he'd just take care of them both at the same time, and he did. He wiped out Mars totally, completely, and us, very, 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 very close. Very few people were left. If you read the accounts in Velikovsky, it was just stunningly disastrous. And it created the 3 layers that are global around the Earth. The red bed, which is the boiled flesh, which is all that was left on Mars. Everything else on Mars went away. But we had the boiled flesh, which is the red bed, then the gray clays were all settled of the oceans, which are the plant life and trees and all that stuff. That stuff didn't make it. Bacteria did and so forth. And that came back to create the great oxygenation, where the planet revived fairly quickly, because there was no oxygen left after that impact. There was almost no oxygen. They couldn't start fires. There wasn't enough oxygen to even start a fire. So it was just on the edge of being total gone, which Mars didn't make it at all. All right, let's see if we can put this thing to bed, so to speak. Now, that is the place that I'm talking about, which is the tag that secures the vagina in the body. Every body part has a place that stabilizes that body part in the body. And it's a lock. I call it the spurlock. So there's a spurlock of the vagina. And that tab straps down to somewhere else in the body where it anchors, so that this can do what it has to do. And it does. Anyway, it's what can I say? All right, this is going to be really hard to see. We've pretty much got to see it in a microscope. But there's 2 little dots at the end of this flap that comes down. You see them? And what they do is that flap comes down just like at the bottom of that vagina. The spurlock is right there. You see that? That anchors. That's a really tough, gnarly anchor. And then the strap comes down and meets the piece of meat that this anchors into, and through those two little tubes, the fluids run. All right, and as they meet up, there's a really tough, gnarly spot which really anchors it. That's the spurlock. That's the circle right there that you're seeing on that vagina. And the strap runs down into the body to hold this piece to whatever it was held to. This is obviously muscle. But when that tendinous stuff comes down and the spurlock anchors, then it flares out really thin, but it's still a membrane. You can't even hardly see it now. You see how thin the membranes are? And I showed you the one from Tyson there was 6 feet thick. Right at the very tip is the 2 little holes. You can see it very clearly in a microscope. I think you might be able to see it right there a little bit. But that's where the fluids come down. If you take a chicken breast, where the breasts come down together like here, there's a really gnarly spot. You always, normally eat that. And right at the very end, if you check, you'll see the 2 pieces come in just like this. There's 2 tubes, and they feed whatever it locks into in the breast. Okay, I believe I've told you that Venus is born from Jupiter's great red spot, which is a vagina. We're going back to planet porn here in a second. So if you don't want to see, don't see. This is the great red vagina, which is not the great red spot, it's the great red vagina. Now, it has all the anatomical features, 100%. Including the hairline, the vaginal canal, the vaginal ripples, the urethra, the labia majora majorna, virtually everything. And it has the spurlock, which is unknown to medical science. I have studied vaginas very carefully. And that's a vaginal spurlock. You go, oh, what does that mean, Roger? Well, a spurlock is where a body part anchors into its respective area. Now, look at this very, very closely. Whoops, got some lines showing up there. There's two little dots here, and there's two little dots here. Can you see those? Those, I believe, transfer fluids. And I will show you why, and I'm going to show you in some of the mud fossils I have here. And you can see that in the bottom of where a chicken tissue invests. Wherever these spurlocks lock in, which is the locked in of the body part. I know I'm just making jokes and playing around, but this is very serious. This literally locks that vagina into place so it doesn't rip out and go this way or that way, and it's solid in its area that it's anchored into, and that's the anchor. It's just what it is. And I show a piece of muscle here. I'm going to show you in close. This right here has the same sort of thing. There's an anchor right there. And that also has the two little dots, which I'm going to show you this. And this is unknown to medical science. They didn't know about the interstitium until I found it in 2015. And in papers was written on 2018 where they accepted it, yes. My paper was 2015 about fascia facilitated fossilization, because that's what I found, was this fascia makes these things fossil. It facilitates their fossilization. That's what the paper was. Now, again, that locks it up for me. There's no question whatsoever. That's what this is. All right, I'm going to show you this in graphic detail, and it pretty much looks exactly what I think I was expecting to see. This is the tab and the spurlock of the vagina, and these two spots are the little holes. Now, look at this one carefully. From here, I believe there's a little tube comes down to this, and I think that might be some kind of a little organ down here. And then the fluid continues on down into the next body part, because this is, I believe, fluids are running out of here. Let me turn the light off. Sometimes it's a little easier to see. Hold on. All right, it's kind of hard to see, but these are the two holes where the fluids originated. Now, of course, it's, you know, it's not, normally you would see tubes, I believe. They would come down here. Now, this one here, I think that's a tube. It goes right back up to there. And then it goes right to here. Now, this is exactly what I found in other areas where it attaches. As it comes out of here, it looks to me like it might even be an organ right there, a little tiny organ that deals with those fluids. And the other one comes out here and just goes down by itself. All right, this with this tube here goes past this organ. You see the tube? There's a tube here and a tube here, coming from those two holes. And that right there, I think, could be an organ. It could be an organ. All right, this is red flesh, quite obviously. Chicken is the white meat. Now, but it has the same characteristics of the fascia and the spurlock and the transfer tubes at the end of the spurlock. That is it right there. Now, this is the heavy, dense connective tissue, just like this. And then it goes into the very fine, thin, silvery looking, which is, this has the same stuff on it. All right, and that's where the tubes come down to here. Now, we're going to look at this up close. Right down at the very end here where it comes and the two tubes come. And I think I can see an organ and I can see the two tubes. All right, this is not too bad to see. This is where the chicken tissue came down. Just like this, the triangle came down and the two tubes came across. There's tube 1, tube 2. Okay, coming out of here. From that big flared out piece that went back here on the chicken tissue. Now, this one here, it's underneath this, so you really can't see it all that well. But I don't think there's anything attached to this tube. It's just a straight through. And it comes out down the other end somewhere. Now, this one's different. This one's got an attachment to it. You see it coming off there? That's attached right to this. What's going on there, I don't know. But it seems to have drifted off. It could be blood, I can't say it isn't, or it could be some kind of an organ thing. But look at what does happen. It comes into this glob of stuff, and then it comes out through a tube. Now, is that just blood? It could be. Well, why did it start here from the lymph tube? This right here is a tube from the lymph. I'm almost 100% certain of that, and so is that. Why would this just come out from the lymph if it was blood? I'd like to know what the chemistry is inside of here, and it's got some interesting looking stuff going on in here. And then it sweeps back and comes out here. Now, what is this all about? What's this? Is that an organ? That looks very similar to what we saw at the bottom of the vagina where it plugged in. It's just not ripped away. And the picture stops right after that spot right there, basically where the thing keeps running this way. This was just torn up because it was butchered, basically. All right, let's take one last look. This is the latch. All right, these two holes are the holes that send out the interstitial fluids. And that right there, I believe, is a tube. And this one right here is a tube. But it runs right past that little thing, whatever it is. I don't know what it is. And then it continues on. See, the tube continues on, the tube continues on. And this looks virtually identical to what we saw at the chicken tissue. And one side coming out of here, this tube, I don't know how well you can see that. It looks to me like that's a tube coming out. It's eroded a little bit. And that comes right around here and right down there, past whatever that is. And again, I don't know what that is. But then it continues on as a tube. Now the other side comes out and just continues on as a tube. This, it could be something, could be nothing. But this whole area here is that spurlock. It's unknown to science. They don't know about this. Doctors don't know that that's there. They just think it's part of the fascia where it just sort of molds into the next part. But I'm saying it right now, this fluid-filled highway they never knew about before either is the source of these fluids. And I think I showed you that. Here it is right here. That's where those fluids transfer from one thing to the next. If they coat a kidney, and it has a lot of salts or whatever's got in there, and then those fluids have to go to the stomach next, let's say. And there's a lot of acids in there. Something's got to change with the fluids. You would think they're protecting two completely different sets of chemistry. So is that little bitty organ there? Is that spurlock the thing that's doing it? Is this piece right here going into some little organ and it's saying, okay, clean it up, do what you got to do to it, and send it off to the next one, which it does. Let me see, I have another shot of that. Maybe it's better. Hold on. All right, yeah, this gives it a little better detail. Here it comes down. Whatever's going on here, I don't know. No idea. But I see no reason for this to break off like this. None. To come out of there, to exit from this tube. And then again, what does it do here? It doesn't look like the whole thing is exiting, so it's just a little piece of it. What is it doing? Sniffing around? I don't know. But this, whatever happens in here, it spits back out here. And the only thing I can think of that could happen in here is chemistry from the tube, which is these fluids that are the interstitial fluids. And they have all the enzymes and the bacteria and all that stuff in them. That's the only thing I can take from this. And it comes out that tube. It flows right down this tube, right out. It's not involved in this tube. However, this does have something going on. That little white fiber, you see it coming down here? I haven't been able to figure this out, but that is, no question in my mind, that is inside this tube. And it comes down to here, and it stays under here. Now, where it goes from there, I don't know. It was tasty. By the way, there's vaginas laying everywhere. This is that little tiny seam that runs down there. If you can see that, and you have any anatomical expertise, that is the linea alba. They call that the white line. And that separates the two halves of your body. That's obviously a female body part called a vagina. And all of the anatomical features are here, including a baby being born. I'll show you in a second. But this linea alba separates as the body's soaked, and it's a seam that folds together, and that's a seam. Now that seam can stretch. Why would it stretch? Well, when a woman has a baby. When it stretches, sometimes they become the linea nigra, which means the dark line. And what it would do, it would separate out here, and it'd just be like a dark line here between the two body parts coming together. That's what a linea nigra is. The linea alba is before they ever have any babies. And I don't think this woman's ever had a baby before, but she was gonna. And here's the baby right here. Here's the baby's face. There's the baby's arm, shoulder. This little whitish looking stuff is the skin. It's the skin. Like this side has no problem. This side, the baby was in here, and it's being forced through the vaginal wall, and it's actually ripping through that skin, which is the skin here. Now there might be another baby back here, because I don't see any reason for a big bump to be here either. There's nothing here. There shouldn't be anything like this. She might have had twins going to be born. Now this is the Tracian womb cave, they call it. The academics say, oh, that just happened, that somebody carved it, this and that. No, absolutely not. You can't carve that little line. I mean, it's got everything. It's got everything exactly. And the face of the baby poking out there. This is insanity to think somebody carved that. But that's what you get. Oh, no, we don't see it. So, you know, I think I've shown enough to make my case, whatever that case started out to be. I get involved. I go through about 15 different things at once, but that's just the way it works. One thing leads to another, to another, to another, to another. We ended up with vaginas, Mars, Jupiter, Venus, you know, gigantic villi in the desert with layers of membranes that are just astoundingly large. Almost every time it becomes somewhat of a ramble. I can't help that. I can't focus in on one little thing without drawing attention to something else, because one thing supports the other. If I don't have any support for something, I just say, that's the end of it. Well, then I'm just like everybody else. I need support. I need physical evidence. I need material evidence. I need chemistry. I need biology, anatomy, history, ancient texts. I want to see everything together and then see what makes sense. You can't pick up one little thing. Oh, look at that rock. This is all it is. No. It could be. But you got to prove that. And I think I prove virtually everything I ever claim. If it's examined. I mean, if you saw the stuff I showed you about the stuff they brought back from Bennu, It's just got to be examined. This is it right here. It's heart sarcomeres. He went up and picked this up. Cost us billions of dollars. These are heart fibers. These are membranes, and these are the heart sarcomeres. And this was from the mission to Bennu. How can we better understand? Well, pay attention to the evidence. National Science Foundation, Smithsonian, that's our money, my friends. And a lot of it. Not to pay attention. And then all the stuff that's on Mars, 10 years ago, all explained, very, very simple. Still nothing. Venus has the same stuff. I say there's nothing but biology, and these balls are everywhere because they're skin, and they are even on Mars. And underneath is the basement layer. Oh, I'm sorry, this is Venus. They're everywhere. There's nothing I can find it doesn't have biology. Even everything in space. Comet 67P, 100% biology. Oumuamua, same thing, biology. Psyche, Bennu, you name it. I can't find anything that isn't biology, not a single thing. So it's time to change the way we think, or at least start to think a little more about what the actual possibilities are. And even look at this. This is the first documented historical documentation of a breech birth fully clothed. The only other instance of this is when Jupiter gave birth to Athena, that came out fully armored with a sword, screaming, "Yeehaw!" ready to do battle. I'm not kidding you. That's what it says. He didn't actually give birth to her. He had a headache, and he called Hephaestus, and Hephaestus cleaved his head open, and she popped out. So I guess it happens every now and then.